You're listening to the Culture Junkie podcast, where we go beyond the surface of pop culture.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Xandra. Together, we dive into the craft process and passion that drive today's creators. This is the Culture Junkie podcast.
Okay, today's guest is someone whose path took a pretty interesting turn. Madelyne Beckles started out in the fine art world doing the whole creative grind and then pivoted into something completely different, holistic nutrition and yoga. Now she's helping people get their lives, habits, and bodies a lot more dialed in, but through a lens that's still very much rooted in creativity and self-awareness. We're going to get into that and how that shift actually happened, what she's building now, and where she's taking it to next. Madelyne, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, we have you. Listen, I've followed your career since you were very young and singing at book openings. I know you went to the art school in Toronto. But how did you originally get into fine art?
I think the more abstract explanation is that ever since I was a kid, I really enjoyed expressing myself through my body. So whether that was dancing, singing, acting, playing dress up, I was a creative kid. So I feel like that's kind of how it started out. And I followed that thread in high school a little bit more seriously by going to a performing arts high school. So that kind of set me in a trajectory where I was around artists and around creative people, and it was encouraged to follow that path outside of high school and into continuing ed.
When your post-secondary education, was that art focused as well?
Yeah, I did my undergraduate degree in art history and gender studies. So a little bit more of a theoretical approach to art, as opposed to creating. But I was really inspired by learning about that side of art, learning about theory, especially as a mixed race woman. My degree in gender studies really kind of opened up my lens to, I guess, understand a little bit more of my positionality in the world. And so that was really inspiring to me to then make my own artwork using my body as a means of performance and also installation as well.
Wow, I know you had a great deal of success quite early in your career. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising, I guess, but I think the subjects that were exciting to me, this theory, feminist theory, critical race theory, were also having a moment in pop culture. So I was at the right place at the right time to be speaking about those things and expressing those things and also problematizing those things or deconstructing them.
So you were the intersection at the intersection.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So, but what was it like day to day working in the art world?
Well, after my undergrad, I started working. I did a few kind of odd jobs, but I ended up working at a large art institution in Toronto, one of the biggest museums in Canada. And that job was, I was an entry-level position, so it was quite administrative, but I got to work alongside really established artists as well as emerging artists, also assist people in realizing their own vision. So there was kind of this like corporate 9 to 5 element of the job, but also more kind of boots on the ground production and ideation as well. So every day was pretty different and it was very stimulating. And I learned a lot about processes and systems, but also about bringing a vision to life.
Well, so I guess you enjoyed it, but at what point did you start feeling like, okay, this maybe isn't it?
Hmm. Well, when you work for a big institution, there's a lot of bureaucracy and there's a lot of red tape. So that started to wear at me a little bit. I also recognized that I was in a pretty privileged position. Many people, have to work a long time to get a position like I had. So I kind of felt like, okay, I've made it to this institution. There's not much room for growth right now. So I kind of have to stay in this position for years, essentially, until somebody else leaves for me to move up. So there was that element. And then the pandemic happened and we started working from home. And I really enjoyed that freedom and flexibility and just having a bit more autonomy with how I spent my time and managed my workflow and ran my days. And so I think for a lot of people, lockdown and just the pandemic in general clarified values and what you like and what you didn't like, especially in the workplace. Once we were called back to work about, I don't know, I guess maybe 2022 was kind of when we were starting to go back to the office more frequently.
Right.
I had already kind of started making moves to switch my career, but I realized just how untenable 9 to 5 being in an office Monday to Friday was going to be for me.
So the pandemic, you wouldn't say it pushed you towards wellness, but it was part of the gradual shift that was going on in your life.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. I mean, I was always on the path to a degree. I was a dance major in high school, so there's kind of that, component of health and body maintenance. I did a yoga teacher training during my undergrad when I took a gap year. So there had been pieces there, and it kind of all came together for me in the pandemic when I really needed to hone in on structure and just self-care, navigating something traumatic collectively and individually.
So was it I guess it wasn't that dramatic a transition then, right? It was just something that was gradually happening, holistically, we might say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I was, gardening at home. I was cooking. I was getting deeper into my yoga practice as a home practice because we didn't have access to studio spaces. So, yeah, it was becoming clear just the things that I was spending my time on. And I kind of just had this moment where I realized that I could take these hobbies, these passions, and perhaps turn it into a career.
Okay. So why holistic nutrition specifically? What clicked there for you?
I've always loved food and cooking and I think just learning more about food was a big draw for me. I mean, now my work has kind of expanded to include other elements of health, but I was cooking a lot at home. We all were. So that was really my focus at that time. But once I went into my program, I realized just how broad health is. It's not just about what you eat and how you move your body. There's emotional components, mental components, spiritual components. So the work has definitely broadened as I've also begun my practice working with clients.
So did you go in all in right away, or did you gradually move, wet your feet and kind of move up to your knees and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it was a gradual process. So I started doing a program that allowed me to keep my full-time job. So in the beginning of the pandemic, that was quite easy. I was working from home and I worked in the public programming department. So there weren't much public programs going on while we were in lockdown. So I had a lot of free time to delve into my studies. And the program was a 3-year diploma program. So it took time to complete, and I was able to kind of create an exit plan from my corporate job, squirrel away
Right.
money and also share what I was learning and kind of shift my social media and online presence to incorporate more about health and nutrition.
Yeah, your online presence is fabulous, and I mean, it really does inform what you're doing and what you're trying to do. So, but what's something that people get totally wrong about nutrition?
I mean, I think a lot of things. Okay. I think the general thing would be that there is a one size fits all approach. A lot of times, we live in an age where you can get a lot of information. There's a lot of different contradicting viewpoints that are easily accessible. Following somebody else's lead, I think, is an approach that often leads to frustration and it's unsustainable. So my work as a practitioner is to guide people and provide information and education, but ultimately I'm there to reflect back to them what they usually already know about themselves, or I help them to see it in a different way.
And so it's not just the work for you, it's part of your lifestyle. So where does yoga come into the picture for you?
Well, yoga is my spiritual practice. It's my primary practice of movement. I'm also an educator, so I lead classes and trainings for other teachers. So, yeah, there's many different channels to my work, but it's all kind of under this umbrella of holistic health and lifestyle design, essentially.
Yeah, so you have a balanced outlook to it, both the physical side and the mental side. Do you see any crossover between your art background and how you teach your and practice now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of my clients are creatives. They come to me because they know that I understand those lifestyle implications around having travel in their schedule, lots of social functions, just a more unconventional approach to the everyday. So it comes at me in terms of clientele, but I also really think of health as a way to self express. So what you eat, how you organize your time, how you shape your environment, all informs how you show up every day and how you feel. So I really think of life as a creative act, and health is a big part of how we're able to live with our fullest expression.
So what does your workday look like?
I mean, it varies. So, I teach yoga classes, I work with clients, I write for a few different publications and my newsletter. So, it's kind of varies day to day, but I actually organize my week around the planetary days of the week. So, I'm very into cyclical living in alignment with nature, whether that's the seasons, the planets, your menstrual cycle. So I base my week on the planetary days. So Monday, that's moon day. It's a day where you're meant to ease into responsibilities. So I typically teach a morning yoga class. Then I do some stuff around meal prep for myself. And I usually do content creation on Mondays. Tuesdays is Mars Day. Mars is like a fiery planet. It's like get shit done. So I usually reserve Tuesdays for heavy administrative tasks or anything that requires me to kind of sit at my desk with my head down. Wednesdays are a day that support communication, Mercury day. So that's when I like to write my newsletter, take meetings, or explore different ideas. And then Thursdays are my main day with clients. Jupiter day. It's a planet of expansion, of teaching, of wisdom. And it just so happens that my clients always schedule to be on Thursday. So it really works
Of
out.
course.
And then Friday is Venus day. I usually only work a half day that day. I kind of use it to plan the week ahead so that I can enter Monday knowing what's happening already. I'll also do a little bit of finance work on Fridays. Venus is
Mm.
a supportive planet of financial abundance. So that's kind of how I use nature to organize my time. And yeah, when you start to work with those frameworks, you can really see how we are part of this planet. We're not apart from it.
Well, you said you work with a lot of creatives and artists. What other types of people are you helping?
I would say 99% of my clients are women, usually between the ages of 25 and 45. So there's kind of that late 20s group of women who are trying to figure out the next direction of their life, kind of figure out how to live. That's how old I was when I started this path. I was 27. So, you're starting to understand the responsibilities of adulthood and figuring out, okay, like, how am I actually supposed to live here? So, that's a group of women that I work with. I work with women in their 30s who are, starting to understand their hormones a little bit better. Things change from your 20s to your 30s. There's differences in digestion and the menstrual cycle. Some women are preparing to conceive a child, so we work with fertility. And then for women in their 40s, you're hitting that perimenopause age. So it's also midlife. There might be some clarification around values or next direction, or settling into a deeper rhythm with kids and wanting more structure around how a week is organized as a family. But then there's also that hormonal piece, that other shift into menopause. So again, like my work is really about cycles, and with women have different seasons of our lives based on our hormones. So there's a lot to be nimble about and readdress as we move from our 20s to our 40s.
So why do you think it's so many 1% guys?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe it's just also my style, my aesthetic, how I present stuff. I definitely take a feminist approach to this work. Yeah. And I'm less of a clinical practitioner. I'm not
Okay.
doing the white coat lab thing. My work is a little bit more grounded in domestic life and lifestyle. And again, these cycles.
Okay. Makes sense, I guess. So what's one change that you see that really makes a difference for your clients? What's that one thing that you can tell them, try this and it'll help right away?
Well, practically, usually drinking water. That's usually the first thing I drink.
Yeah.
Start working with everybody is people are usually dehydrated. People are usually not eating enough, especially women. We have, been programmed, conditioned to eat less, be smaller, take up less space, be kind of afraid of food, and be controlling of our bodies. So usually there's some undernourishing going on there. So those are kind of the practical things. It's like drink more water, eat 3 meals a day that are balanced. But then a more abstract concept or a concept that I work on with people is listening to themselves, like listening to your body, understanding the signals that it's giving you to be responsive and adaptive to what your body's telling you, befriending your body essentially, as opposed to
Okay.
seeing it as separate or an enemy or something that needs to be like beaten into submission.
Okay. Well, it's all really insightful. Trust me, I know about the drinking water. I'm being nagged to drink water at this very moment, and trust me, I will go and have some. But from the business side, what's been harder than you expected about building such a cool practice?
I guess, I mean, starting a business is not for the weak. It's a mirror, right? So it shows you your insecurities. It shows you, I think it's honestly one of the biggest tools for self-development and spiritual development, if you want to look at it that way.
Mm,
So it shows you a lot about yourself and your limitations or perceived limitations. But also, when I was in school, the direction that they prepare you for is essentially you are a nutritionist, you're going to sit with clients, and that's what your work is. But my work has many different channels, which is a welcome surprise. It means I have variety in my day to day and I get to be creative. And yeah, there's just different modes for me to express and also different levels to connect with people if they aren't ready to make that investment financially or time and energy wise. There's other ways to connect with me and work with me. So I think it's more just been an unexpected path that I always say, like, I do a lot of different work to make this life work. It's not just sitting at your desk on Zoom, client after client after client.
right. Okay. So what's been better about starting your own business than you thought it would be?
Well, having autonomy over my time, that was always a driver for me, but it took a while to unlearn what I had picked up in my 9 to 5 around how to spend my days, right? So I was in the beginning, like rushing to my desk for 9 o'clock, like refreshing my email constantly, like waiting for something to happen, where it's kind of counterintuitive when you start a business to have more agency over your time. So that has been a fun process and a creative process in itself to figure out like, what is the structure of my days? How do I want my life to actually feel like every day? As, someone who is their own boss.
Right. Well, so looking ahead, what are you trying to build right now? And like, what's the bigger picture?
I mean, I have a lot of different kind of dreams. I think I would like this business to still have multiple channels. I think that just works for me as a creative, as somebody who's artistic. I think I would feel really boxed in if I just had one specific stream of income or title, even like, holistic health practitioner is kind of the umbrella term, but I take on many different roles throughout the day and throughout the week. My biggest vision, though, would be to write a book and have that as a tool for people to translate my teachings and lay out this seasonal framework that I work through and share recipes, just kind of have things in one place as a point of access to this work, as opposed to people just having to work with me directly.
Right. So do you see it growing into something bigger, or do you want it to stay personal and more hands-on?
Who knows? I'm open to both. I mean, I like the hands-on approach. I don't think I'd ever want to be like a corporation per se. I'm happy to have things smaller and more grassroots and personal and just sustainable. But who knows? I'm open to whatever the universe has in store.
Well, listen, I'll never forget your installation in New York at the MoMA. That was truly a once in a lifetime thing for me anyway. Any chance fine art makes a comeback in some form?
Yeah, I think so. I the way I think about an art career is that it's kind of ebbs and flows, right? Like I had a really big period of producing from, I would say, 14 to 2019, like a solid 5 years of exhibiting very consistently, putting out new work each time. Like that's a lot of idea generating and output, right? So I really do think that there's these periods of like incubation and inspiration and gestation. And then there's a period of like putting it all out there. So I'm definitely inspired and feeling things stirring again, but um, I think I'm less dependent on art making and an art practice being my entire career, which gives me a little bit more freedom and again, flexibility. Like I'd love to do a residency and start to build work in a really slow, intentional way, as
Right.
opposed to, okay, here's an opportunity, make something, do something.
So does the new media and the platforms therein give you a different perspective on how you can become an artist?
Yeah, I was talking about this with Jesse, my husband, yesterday. I think art and the art world is also in the process, as with many things, is being redefined, right? You don't need to have an exhibition in person for people to find your work. You don't need to have this kind of hierarchy of legitimacy to your work. So, yeah, I think the space has become a little bit more democratic in terms of how we can consume and find people that resonate. But I think the art world, capital A, capital W, is still kind of catching up to like what its relevance is in 2026 and beyond.
So listen, so Madeline, if you could look back now, what would you tell your younger self when you were, all fired up creating all that art?
I don't think I would tell her anything. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, you know, I think our paths are our paths, and I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't done all of the things that I did then. So I guess the only thing would be a little bit of encouragement. But yeah, she just needs to keep doing her, and
There
it's
you
going to
go.
lead to somewhere she could never even expect.
That's amazing. Listen, your transition story is obviously inspiring. I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired by it. If someone's listening and they feel kind of stuck there where they are, what would you tell them to do?
Hmm. Yeah, I think a really great practice is to get clear on your values. So think about like what gives you energy, what drains your energy, what do you wanting more of in your days? What are you wanting less of? Like, get really clear on like what is actually meaningful to you. And also, it's like a career doesn't have to be everything. Like, you can have a rich life where maybe, you like the safety of working for someone else, but you expand on your time off and have a richness in what you do socially, your hobbies, etc. So I think there's many ways to build a life that feels good to live in. It doesn't have to look like mine. It doesn't have to be that you like quit your job and make your passion your business. It's really just about kind of tuning in and being more intentional.
Madelyne, it's been a fabulous chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Anything coming up soon that we should know about?
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah.
I have a group program launching next week. So, depending on when this comes out, but it's a 6-week group program. So, it's group coaching, one on one weekly sessions with me where we are going to use this concept of building a life. It's called the creative act of living well. So, it's all about finding out your values and building out a structure and a flow for your week, for your month, for your year that feels like it really reflects you.
Sounds amazing. Madelyne, thanks again. We'll talk soon. Come back and tell us how it all went.
I will. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.